Hi, and welcome back to 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Sylvia.
And I'm Vivian. Welcome back.
Today we are going to talk about potty training, something that every parent goes through in raising their children and the range and the experience of what that's like.
Potty training, well, that's the bread and butter of both parenting and pediatrics, so I'm excited. Let's jump in.
Welcome to the 10 Kids, 2 Docs podcast. Seasoned pediatricians and longtime friends, Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin have counseled thousands of parents and are raising 4 and 6 kids, respectively. Join these doctor moms as they incorporate fun and their combined wisdom and experience to share parenting insights for anyone looking for practical and trustworthy guidance. Please note that this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment from your doctor.
Okay, so Sylvia, obviously, between us, we have potty trained 10 children. So
Yes.
I'm curious to hear about your experiences with potty training your 4.
Sure. All my children potty trained at different times, but I think my best story may be my child that potty trained very early. It happened kind of on her own. It was a very self-motivated thing. And by her second birthday, she was wearing underwear. And I want to just kind of talk about the early signs for her that we saw that made it very easy to transition. She was definitely one that would often wake up in the morning with a dry diaper. And at that point, when we realized that that was happening quite a bit, it was very easy then early on to just get her out of bed and put her right on the potty. Oftentimes, it's hard to know when they have to go. And if they've gone the whole night with a dry diaper, you know that they need to go to the
Oh,
bathroom. Like
yeah,
that's
good
a
one.
must. So
Yeah.
we kind of captured that opportunity where we started just kind of putting her on the toilet in the morning and just having immediate success, right? And that was enough for her at a very young age to then just realize that she could just hold it and go on the potty every single time. I'm interested to hear your experience. Tell me about your experience potty training.
Okay, when I think about my experience potty training my 6, I think probably the most memorable and poignant story was my 4th. And he was completely potty trained around 2.5, maybe a little bit later than that. And then just before he turned 3 was when we got 2 foster children. They were both younger than him. And he held on for about a week and then he completely regressed. And I was determined for him to continue to remember how to use the potty. I was like, come on, little guy, we can do this. We can do this. I will clean up after you. Please stay in underwear. Let's push through. And after a week or so of that, I just gave up. It was too much. It was too much cleaning up accidents. He clearly was not going to be able to do it. And that was such a classic pattern that, we had this significant life change, this significant stress on his little body, and he just regressed. So at that point, I put him back into diapers, which meant I hit my all-time personal parenting high, which was having 3 in diapers at the same time.
That's painful.
Yes. I waited a good 4 to 6 months. And then I just trained him and his younger sister together. Boom. We just get them done together. But that was my most painful regression point where I felt like I just have to fully give up because I can't fight this battle right now. I don't have the energy. I did also have one who, potty trained pretty well, but continued to have that once a day daytime accident for a while. And that can be very frustrating for parents as well.
Right.
As I've looked into this, there was this argument that developed in psychology and parenting around potty training sometime in the 90s, because when you look at the data back in the 1960s or so, most children were trained by 18 months. And then as we move out to the 90s, most are trained by age 3.
3.
Yes. And then almost all are trained by age 4. And certainly part of that must be due to the proliferation of less expensive disposable diapers. So it's easier for parents to keep their children in diapers longer. But then there was also this whole movement in psychology of, well, are we damaging our children by forcing them to potty train when they're not ready? And is it actually better for the child to wait until they're fully showing signs of readiness? And then when you do train them, do you do the 2 days reward system or, keep them naked and train them? And is that bad for them if you're pushing them like that or instilling some kind of external reward for it? Or do you just totally let them take control and let them do it? In other words, are you doing this completely child-led or completely parent-led? And if you want to read something funny about this, I would direct you to a New York Times article that came out in 1999 entitled "Two Experts Do Battle Over Potty Training," in which a child psychologist and pediatrician literally fight over these views and which is better and less damaging for the child. And
Right.
so I bring that up because I've said this on multiple podcasts that we've done. At the end of the day, I feel like there is something to be said for the parent deciding what works best for the parent, right?
Right.
Not everything we do in child rearing has to revolve around what is absolutely the best for the child's psychology, because in reality, what's probably best for the child's psychology is keeping the parent sane and doing what's best for the parent, right?
Mhm.
And I think that we can make these generalizations about what are the best ways to potty train, but in reality, what we need is to empower parents to look at your child as an individual, yourself as an individual, and figure out what is the best system for the two of you or the three of you working together, right?
Right.
So like you illustrated with your child, and I had children like this, when I had children who at those young ages started to show readiness, I was on it. As a parent, I want this done. I see it in you. You're willing. And if that is 2 days of not wearing a diaper and being naked and I'm just cleaning up after you, or if it's 2 days of rewarding you with a candy every time you're on the potty and that's all it takes, I'm totally going to do that. But I could see that in my child. There was not only this interest and willingness, but there was this streak of fierce independence in wanting to do it. And so I capitalized on that and said, let's just do it right now at this young age and do it fast.
Mhm.
When I had, like my son that regressed, when I had other children where it was just taking too much work, it was not a good time or season in life for me to do it, I, with confidence, put them back in diapers and was like, I'm not doing this right now. I don't have
Right.
time. This is becoming a little bit of a battle between you and me, which is not good. And I feel confident that whether you're fully potty trained at age 3 or at age 4 has zero effect on your psychological well-being overall. You're never going to remember. I had to really sit down and think about my kids when we did this as to when they potty trained, because now I don't remember. At the time, it seemed like such a pain to have to go back into diapers, but now it's like passing memory, you know? Sylvia, what do you remember about potty training your children? Was it difficult? Was there a struggle? Was it super easy with all of them?
So there wasn't going to be a struggle in our household. Like
Yes,
diapers were never a big deal to
right.
any of us for changing. And I feel like that being said, we kind of just waited for our kids to be ready and ready without a ton of accidents.
Yeah.
So I don't think that there was a big push.
Yeah, often, you hear parents say, yeah, I didn't really have to do anything. They kind of trained themselves. Usually means that they just waited until their child was a little bit older and really ready. And, that is not a bad option.
There was no training involved.
I also wanted to point out, we reference healthychildren.org, Bright Futures, American Academy of Pediatrics guidelines a lot. And when you look at their potty training literature, one of the things I really love, Sylvia, that cracks me up is that it says, try to enjoy potty training. Toilet training is a necessary chore, but it can also be fun at times. It says, do what you can to occasionally take your eye off the long-term goal and enjoy the charming, funny moments along the way. I mean, I think that's overstating a little bit, although I do really love the intent.
One of the main goals of that narrative is to keep it lighthearted.
Yeah.
Like with the picky eater episode, sometimes when the parents go too intense with their will, you can start creating a negative situation surrounding something that is eventually going to happen and can be I wouldn't use the word delightful, but it can be pleasant, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So maybe we should move on and talk more about the office setting, how the pediatrician may play a role, and maybe some hurdles that parents can experience that you and I have not yet outlined.
Yeah, Yes, let's transition to some of the things we think about and talk about in the office when we're discussing potty training. And first off, I want to say there are certainly scenarios, particularly when we have a child that was fully potty trained, who fully regresses, where it at least needs to be on the parent and pediatrician's mind. Is there some other issue going on, such as constipation? That's a very common one. But setting that aside for now, let's talk about the child who comes in that, 2.5, 3 year, 3.5 age range. The parent is potty training.
Usually the topics come up when there's a problem. If
Mhm.
potty
Yes.
training or expectations from the parents are appropriate, they have resources. They usually try their methods and, most of the time it's successful. So oftentimes in the office, there's been a hurdle, there's been a problem.
That's a really good point. We don't even talk about potty training in the office when it's just happened and everything is fine. I would say that there are three main difficulties that we counsel parents about regularly concerning potty training. The first is that it's just not working. None of the tricks, none of the effort being put into it is having any payoff. The child may use the potty when reminded or occasionally, but really still shows little interest and continues to have frequent accidents. And to that parent, most often the answer, as frustrating as it may be, is time. To take this to an extreme, I've learned from my urology colleagues that, particularly in children with any reason for any neurodevelopmental delay in the mechanisms that allow for potty training, this could be prematurity, it could be significant ADHD, it could be some type of exposure to trauma, it could be other developmental delays, that we generally just need to be patient and give them more time. The other two pitfalls that come up frequently in the office related to potty training are holding stool, as in training for urine only, not for stool, and regression. So why don't you address those, Sylvia?
Usually the biggest problem that I see in the office are related to stooling. And oftentimes the frustration I will hear in the office is they're potty trained for urine,
Hmm.
but when they're ready to have a bowel movement, sometimes the kids will ask to be put in a diaper.
Yeah.
You put the diaper on them, they'll go, usually it's in the corner,
Yes.
have their bowel movement in their diaper, then come back to you and say, "Now I'm ready to be changed." And from a parental standpoint, that is so frustrating, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, they know they have to go. The cue is there to go. They are literally asking. The parents just have a hard time understanding, "Why aren't you just sitting on the potty then?"
Hmm.
What is the hang up here, right? So sometimes this manifests in another way where they will only stool when they are in their diaper, either at nap or at overnight.
Mm. Yeah.
So usually when I see those signs of the child still needs the diaper for stooling, I usually tell the parents a story.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it.
Like adults don't think of pooping this way. But I describe to the parent to put themselves in the mindset of their toddler. I describe stooling as being a mystique. It's somewhat fascinating, sometimes a little bit scary, and sometimes a little bit magical.
Oh my gosh.
It's and the best word that I've come up for it is the mystique
Okay, I'm so intrigued, Sylvia. Keep
of
going.
pooping.
This is not a talk that I give to parents, but maybe I need to adopt it.
Usually, this is the reaction that I have, like you reacted. They're kind of laughing, but in reality, kids are adjusting to their bodily functions. And
Mhm.
some kids, usually these kids that still aren't potty trained for stool, there's a hurdle a comfort level that they need to have with the stooling. Sometimes they might occasionally be on the constipated side, and maybe there's a little bit of pain involved. Sometimes it takes more developmental time to feel comfortable with the process of pooping. And
Right.
I encourage parents to see stooling in that mystique light, to understand their child a little bit more, and to be able to give their child a little bit more time to feel comfortable with pooping on the potty.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
And sometimes when they don't do this and a battle of will ensues, they are a little bit more forceful, a little bit angry, like, "You're not gonna go in the corner of the dining room and poop."
Yeah, yeah.
And when parents try to force that issue, sometimes it leads to more problems with stooling. Sometimes children aren't comfortable releasing their stool in that way, and then they'll start purposefully holding their stool, becoming constipated, and then it starts this cycle where they're a little bit constipated, so it kind of hurts,
Right.
and then they're even more afraid of it the next time around. It becomes a negative feedback loop, and
Right.
oftentimes with those parents, I tell them, "You need to put massive brakes on here." Like, it needs to be completely backed off,
Yeah.
and we need to get them back in diapers where they feel comfortable, even give them a stool softener or something to help them for a little bit to get things moving regularly again and reset the entire clock again.
Yeah, you want to be on guard for constipation. So I do advise parents pay attention to the stool. And then with regards to the child, in as much as possible, I encourage independence. So some of these kids are mature enough that if the pull up is available, they will do it themselves. Like,
Right.
that's great. You know where the pull up is, you can go put it on, and then you can take it off and ask for help. And I also think it's very reasonable to empower some choice as well of, hey, I understand this is what you want to do, and that's fine. If you change your mind and go on the potty, then there is this reward, but
Mhm.
nothing negative. I can see how that would dovetail really nicely with reading Everybody Poops at Night. Some of
Ah.
the classic literature about
Mhm.
stooling, this principle that you're describing, that there's a mystique with it, that the child has a barrier they have to overcome mentally with being able to poop on the potty. That's going to happen at some point
Yes.
naturally. Yeah. And how about regression? The child was toilet trained, the child has regressed, the parents tried to push through, it is just not working. What do you say to that, Sylvia?
My advice in the office is exactly what you did with your 4th, and it's just like, put them back in diapers. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
and they often give me that look, like, "Are you kidding me?" And I'm like, just go back, give them the space and time, and then it will be rediscovered, right?
Yes, and like I alluded to with mine, it may be worth trying for a couple days or a few days to see if you can get your child through that regression and keep them in underwear. But if it is going in the wrong direction, or a battle is developing, or it's just the wrong season in life for the parent to take this on, as an example, the birth of a new sibling is a very common regression point for toddlers. Then don't worry, you can put them back into diapers, knowing that when you get to a point that you and your child are ready to potty train again, it will most likely be very fast the second time around. You are not starting from ground zero. They know how to do it already. They just need to remember. And that usually happens very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, but typically, whenever I encounter anyone with a question or a request or a problem with potty training, I usually tell them to back off.
Mm.
That's almost the universal advice. At the time that they're coming to the pediatrician with an issue, usually at that point, the advice is almost always the same, to backtrack a little bit and give your child space to get comfortable again and then reinitiate on their terms.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. All right, so we've had a fun discussion about potty training, and I want to just end with some summary points. If your child is showing early signs for training, 18 months, before 2 years, or right at the 2-year mark, our advice is to just go for it. Set your expectations low. It may not work out, but there's definitely no harm in trying and trying to have fun with it. And then also at that point to expect accidents. They're younger, it's not as perfect, and although they may mostly be in underwear, accidents still may occur with early training. The second point, you may see potty training for urine happen before potty training for stool, and that's completely normal. Sometimes the stool may take a little bit longer, and allowing your child to have a little bit of control over when they're deciding to potty train with stool. Give them the choice to use the potty when they're ready, and possibly implement rewards at that time, but the stooling should happen on their own terms. Thirdly, regression can occur, especially if there's some life changes, like a sibling being born. So if a regression occurs where they were fully potty trained before or partially potty trained and it seems like they're backtracking, that's completely normal. Parents may try to encourage continued use of the potty in the beginning, but If it seems like it's a larger struggle, if the time and the stage in the parent's life doesn't afford for that pushing, then there's nothing wrong with going back to diapers and then readdressing the potty training at a later date when everyone seems ready again. And finally, parents can choose when to begin potty training, what works well with their schedule and their lifestyle and their needs. However, if problems arise, it's important at that point to listen to your child and see their cues and try to follow their desires a little bit more if there seems to be a problem.
I think those are good points, Sylvia. It's reasonable to remind parents that the majority of children, without a lot of pushing on the part of the parent, will train around age 3. And if they're not trained at that point, the far majority will be potty trained by age 4. So it's a season no matter what. When I look ahead to future topics off of this, we definitely need to talk about constipation in the infant, the toddler, school-aged. That's such a common issue and something we should address. And then we hit on this, and we should talk about a child who is otherwise potty trained, but is still having accidents during the day.
Yes, I also feel like addressing a separate episode on bedwetting and nighttime dryness.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that in this episode, and that's partially because the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, defines bedwetting as a diagnosis that occurs with nighttime wetting after age 5. And that's because such a high percentage of children younger than age 5 who are otherwise potty trained during the day will continue to have accidents at night. That's very normal.
So this was 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Sylvia.
And I'm Vivian. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to 10 Kids, 2 Docs, hosted and created by Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and recommend our podcast to other listeners. Visit our website at 10kids2docs.com, where you can find links to social media and leave comments or suggestions. Back next week with more topics in parenting.